Maylin checked her handbag one last time as the taxi pulled up to the airport terminal. Passport, boarding pass, phone charger, all there. She paid the driver with a polite smile and a generous tip, then stepped out into the crisp morning air. Just another traveler in the crowd, she thought, pulling her simple navy blue carry-on behind her. No one would have guessed that May was worth billions. Her faded jeans, plain white button-up shirt, and comfortable walking shoes gave nothing away. Her wedding ring was the only hint of luxury she wore, a simple band with a modest diamond that caught the light as she pushed her hair back from her face. 15 years of marriage to Victor Lin, the tech genius behind Global Connect, had taught May one important lesson. Wealth was best enjoyed quietly. Unlike the socialites who flashed designer labels and posed for magazines, May preferred the freedom of anonymity. She could go grocery shopping without paparazzi. She could chat with strangers without them changing how they spoke to her. She could just be herself. Today's flight was a perfect example of why she kept her identity private. The reservation was under her maiden name, May Wong. Her first-class ticket had been booked directly, not through her husband's assistant or company. The thrill of surprising her sister Lily in New York made her smile as she joined the check-in line. I haven't seen her in almost 6 months, May thought, tapping her foot in excitement. Her sister's gallery opening was in 3 days, but May was flying in early to help with preparations. Lily had no idea she was coming. She'd told her the exhibition timing was just impossible with Victor's schedule. The line moved quickly. May pulled out her phone to check a text from Victor. Already miss you. Call when you land. Don't forget your sister likes those chocolate things from that place near our house. May smiled. For a tech genius who remembered complex code like it was his native language, Victor was hilariously vague about everyday details. She had already packed an entire box of Lily's favorite hazelnut truffles from the little Swiss chocolatier near their neighborhood. Next, please. May looked up and stepped forward to the counter. The agent was new. She'd never seen him before, despite flying this route several times a year. He looked tired, barely glancing up as she slid her passport and platinum loyalty card across the counter. Good morning, May said warmly. Flight 372 to New York. The agent nodded, typing rapidly. Checking any bags today? Just this carry-on, May replied, lifting her small suitcase slightly. The agent looked at her reservation, then back at her, a brief flicker of something, surprise, crossing his face. May was used to this. People often didn't expect someone dressed so casually to be flying first class. You're in first class, seat 2A, he said, his tone slightly more respectful now. That's a window seat near the front. Thank you, May said, accepting her boarding pass. She didn't need the explanation. She flew often enough to know the plane layout by heart, but she appreciated the courtesy. As she walked toward security, May checked her phone again. Victor had sent a photo of himself making an exaggerated sad face at his breakfast. The caption read, "Coffee isn't the same without you talking about your dreams across the table." They'd been together since college, before the money, before the success. Victor had been a brilliant but awkward computer science major. She'd been studying art history. They'd met when he'd spilled coffee all over her textbooks in the library. Instead of being angry, she'd been fascinated by the complex diagrams he'd been sketching, early designs for what would later become his revolutionary networking. Technology. May smiled at the memory as she placed her carry-on on the security belt. Their relationship had survived his long coding nights, the terror of nearly going bankrupt twice, and finally, the adjustment to sudden extreme wealth when his company went public. Through it all, they'd remained surprisingly normal, at least in private. Security was quick, one benefit of flying first class. May stopped at a cafe for green tea, then wandered through the bookstore, picking up a mystery novel for the flight. Normal traveler things. No one gave her a second glance, and that's exactly how she liked it. Her phone buzzed with a message from Victor's assistant. Mr. Lin asked me to confirm your car service in New York. Driver will wait at arrivals with your name. May quickly replied, Thanks, Lucy. Please use Wong, not Lin, on the sign. It's a surprise visit. Lucy's response came immediately. Understood. Enjoy your flight. Me checked the time, still 40 minutes before boarding. She found a quiet corner in the first-class lounge and sipped her tea, watching planes take off through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Despite flying regularly, She still found something magical about these massive metal machines lifting into the air. The lounge was half empty this early in the morning. A businessman talked loudly on his phone about quarterly projections. A woman in an expensive suit slept with her mouth slightly open, an untouched mimosa on the table beside her. An older couple studied a travel guide together, pointing and whispering excitedly. May loved watching people imagining their stories. Before marrying Victor, she'd been an artist, not successful by any measure, but passionate. Now she painted only for pleasure, her studio at home filled with canvases no one but Victor and close friends ever saw. Money had given her freedom, but she sometimes missed the hunger of trying to make it on her own. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was Lily. "Kill me now. Caterer just canceled for opening night. 3 days notice." She bit her lip to keep from responding. If she told Lily she was coming, it would ruin the surprise. But she knew her sister was probably having a meltdown right now. The gallery opening was Lily's big break, her first solo show as a curator. "Your sister is just like you," Victor had said once. Creative, stubborn, and way too proud to ask for help. It was true. Both Wong sisters had inherited their father's fierce independence. Dad had moved them from Taiwan to America with nothing but 3 suitcases and determination. "Never let anyone see you struggle," he'd told them. "Just work harder." May glanced at the departure board. They'd start boarding soon. She gathered her things and headed toward the gate, mentally reviewing her surprise plan. She'd show up at Lily's apartment tonight, help solve the catering crisis, then spend the next few days making sure the exhibition went perfectly. At the gate, travelers were already lining up. May stood back, waiting for the first-class boarding call. She felt a familiar flutter of excitement. Despite flying frequently, she never took the luxury for granted. She remembered all too well the days of middle seats in economy, when she and Victor were just starting out. Her thoughts drifted to her husband again. He was in Singapore closing a major deal, something that would bring affordable internet to remote regions in Southeast Asia. The project meant everything to him. Technology should connect people, not divide them, he always said. His passion for breaking down digital barriers had made him not just rich but respected. "We are now welcoming our first-class passengers to board. Flight 372 to New York," announced the gate agent over the PA system. May picked up her carry-on and moved toward the priority lane, boarding pass in hand. She joined the short line of well-dressed travelers, feeling slightly underdressed in her simple outfit. But comfort was more important than appearances for a 6-hour flight. As she approached the gate, she noticed a new agent she hadn't seen before standing beside the regular attendant. The woman had a stern expression and was scrutinizing each boarding pass carefully. When May reached the front of the line, she handed over her pass with a smile. "Good morning," May said cheerfully. The agent looked at her boarding pass, then at May, her eyes narrowing slightly as she took in the casual clothes and lack of visible designer labels. Something in her expression changed, a subtle shift that May had seen many times before. Little did that gate agent know that this simple interaction would spiral into a situation that would change multiple lives before the day was through. The gate agent stared at May's boarding pass, then looked up at her with narrowed eyes. May recognized that look immediately. Judgment, suspicion, and something worse, dismissal. After 15 years of being married to one of the richest men in tech, she had grown familiar with people sizing her up based on appearances. "Is there a problem?" May asked, keeping her voice friendly. The agent, her name tag read Patricia, tapped her manicured nail on the boarding pass. "This shows first class." "Yes," May nodded. "Seat 2A. Patricia's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose slightly. "And you're May Wong?" "That's right," May confirmed, wondering why they were still having this conversation while other passengers waited behind her. Patricia exchanged a look with her colleague, a subtle glance that spoke volumes. "One moment, please. I need to verify something." She picked up a phone and spoke in a hushed tone while May waited, increasingly aware of the impatient sighs from the line forming behind her. A businessman in an expensive suit checked his watch pointedly. A woman with a designer handbag whispered something to her companion. "Is everything okay?" May asked after nearly 2 minutes had passed. Patricia held up one finger without looking at her. "Just wait, please." May felt her cheeks growing warm. The way Patricia had said "just wait" made her feel like a child being scolded. She shifted her weight from one foot to the other, wondering what could possibly be wrong with her ticket. She'd flown dozens of times on this airline, often on this exact route. Finally, a man in a dark blue uniform approached. His badge identified him as Robert Henderson, boarding supervisor. His expression was already set in a practiced customer service smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Is there an issue?" May asked, trying to keep the growing frustration out of her voice. "Ms. Wong," Robert began, emphasizing her name in a way that made May uncomfortable. "There seems to be a discrepancy with your boarding pass." "What kind of discrepancy?" May asked. "You're attempting to board in first class," he said, as if this explained everything. May blinked. "Yes, that's the ticket I purchased." By now, several passengers were openly watching the exchange. I felt exposed under their curious gazes. "Perhaps there's been a misunderstanding," Robert said, lowering his voice slightly. "First-class tickets for this flight start at $4,000. They're typically purchased by—" He paused, giving her simple clothing a quick once-over. "Our executive travelers." The implication was clear, and it stung. May straightened her shoulders. "I'm aware of the price," she said quietly. "I've been a platinum member with this airline for 9 years. I fly this route regularly." Robert's smile tightened. "May I see your platinum card and ID, please?" May reached into her handbag and pulled out her wallet. She handed over her platinum loyalty card and passport. As Robert examined them, Patricia leaned over and whispered something in his ear. He nodded. "Ms. Wong," he said, handing back her documents, "our system shows that your status was upgraded recently through a promotion, and this first-class booking," he glanced at his tablet, "appears to be flagged in our system." "Flagged?" May repeated, her voice rising slightly. "What does that mean?" Robert lowered his voice further. "It means there's a possibility the ticket was obtained fraudulently." The accusation hung in the air between them. Several nearby passengers gasped. May felt as if she'd been slapped. "That's ridiculous," she said, struggling to keep her voice steady. "I purchased this ticket myself with my own credit card." "Check your records." "We have," Patricia interjected. "The purchase was made online using a premium credit card that doesn't match your typical spending pattern." Of course it didn't. May rarely used the black card Victor had insisted she carry for emergencies. She preferred her regular credit card for daily expenses, trying to maintain some normalcy in her life. But she'd used the premium card for this flight because it offered better travel insurance. "This is absurd," May said, her hands trembling slightly. "I've done nothing wrong. The ticket is legitimate." By now, first-class boarding was well underway. Business travelers streamed past, some pretending not to notice the confrontation, others openly staring. May felt like a specimen under a microscope. "We're not accusing you of anything," Robert said in a tone that suggested exactly the opposite. "But we need to follow protocol. Unfortunately, we can't allow you to board in first class at this time." "You can't be serious," May said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We can accommodate you in economy," Patricia offered with false brightness. "There's a middle seat available in row 27. The humiliation was complete. May felt tears threatening to form but refused to let them fall. She'd faced discrimination before. Subtle looks in high-end stores, waiters who addressed Victor instead of her at expensive restaurants, but never something this blatant, this public. For a moment she considered calling Victor. One word from him would solve everything. The airline's CEO had personally courted Victor's investment 3 years ago when the company was struggling. A significant portion of their fleet expansion had been funded by her husband's venture capital firm. But May had always fought her own battles. She'd never used Victor's name or influence to get special treatment. It felt wrong to start now, like admitting these people were right to judge her based on her appearance. "Fine," she said quietly. Row 27, Robert looked relieved. He'd clearly expected more resistance. "We'll refund the difference in fare to your account," he added, as if this somehow made up for the humiliation. Patricia printed a new boarding pass. "Middle seat, I'm afraid. It's quite full today." May took the boarding pass without comment and joined the economy line, feeling dozens of eyes following her. The whispers were already starting. People wondering what she'd done, why she'd been denied access to first class. In the age of social media, she wouldn't be surprised if someone had recorded the whole exchange. When her turn came to board, she walked down the jetway with her head high, despite the burning in her cheeks. She filed past the first-class cabin, catching glimpses of spacious seats and flight attendants offering pre-departure champagne. Her assigned seat, 2A, was empty, waiting for a passenger who would never arrive. The economy cabin was a stark contrast. Narrow seats packed tightly together, passengers struggling to find space for their carry-ons. May made her way to row 27, where a large man in a business suit occupied the aisle seat and a teenager with headphones sat by the window. "Excuse me," she murmured. "I'm in the middle." The businessman sighed dramatically before standing to let her in. May squeezed past him, careful not to bump into other passengers, and settled into the cramped middle seat. Her knees pressed against the seat in front of her. As the final passengers boarded, May stared straight ahead, still processing what had happened. Had she really been denied her rightful seat because she didn't look wealthy enough? Because she wasn't draped in designer labels and flashy jewelry? The businessman beside her spread his newspaper, encroaching on her already limited space. On her other side, the teenager's music was audible through his headphones. May closed her eyes, suddenly exhausted. Once the boarding door closed, she pulled out her phone to switch it to airplane mode. There were 3 new messages from Victor. "How's the flight? Did you get your favorite seat? Just finished my morning meeting. Thinking of you. Send me a pic of the fancy first-class meal. Bet it's better than my hotel breakfast." May stared at the messages, unsure how to respond. Should she tell Victor what had happened? Part of her wanted to protect him from the knowledge that his wife had been humiliated, to spare him the anger he would inevitably feel. Another part of her just wanted to vent to the one person who always took her side. She started typing, deleted it, then started again. Finally, she settled on the truth. There was a problem at boarding. "They wouldn't let me sit in first class. Said my ticket looked fraudulent. I'm in economy, row 27, middle seat. It's fine. I'll call when I land." She hit send before she could change her mind, then switched her phone to airplane mode. As the flight attendants began their safety demonstration, May leaned back in the uncomfortable seat and closed her eyes. She had no way of knowing that her simple text message would set off a chain of events that would turn her quiet journey into airline headline news before the plane even landed in New York. Victor. Lynn was in the middle of the most important business meeting of the quarter when his phone buzzed. Normally, he wouldn't check messages during negotiations, but when he saw May's name flash on the screen, he made an exception. She rarely texted during flights, preferring to read or sketch in her travel journal. He discreetly glanced at his phone under the conference table and read her message, then read it again, his expression darkening with each word. "There was a problem at boarding. They wouldn't let me sit in first class. Said my ticket looked fraudulent. I'm in economy, row 27, middle seat. It's fine. I'll call when I land." Victor felt a rush of heat climb up his neck. It wasn't fine. Not at all. He knew his wife well enough to read between the lines of her short message. May was fiercely independent and rarely complained. For her to mention this at all meant the situation had been truly humiliating. He could picture her sitting uncomfortably in that cramped middle seat, too proud to make a scene, too dignified to drop his name. "Mr. Lin?" The Singapore Airlines executive across the table was looking at him expectantly. "Do you need a moment?" Victor stood up abruptly.
"I apologize, but I need to step out."
"Family emergency." Without waiting for a response, he strode from the conference room, already dialing his assistant's number. "Lucy, I need the direct number for James Wilson, CEO of Transcontinental Airlines, immediately." "Of course, Mr. Lin, is everything okay?" "No," Victor said, his voice clipped. "And it's about to get worse for Transcontinental." While Lucy searched for the number, Victor paced the hallway, his mind racing. 3 years ago, Transcontinental Airlines had been on the brink of bankruptcy. Their outdated fleet and poor customer service had driven them to the edge of collapse. James Wilson had personally visited Victor's office in San Francisco, practically begging for investment. Victor's venture firm had pumped nearly $300 million into the airline, helping them modernize their fleet and rebuild their brand. They'd even created a special technology partnership, with Victor's company providing the innovative in-flight entertainment systems now installed on every transcontinental plane. And now they had humiliated his wife. His phone buzzed. Lucy had sent Wilson's private number. Victor didn't hesitate. He dialed immediately, not caring that it was 2 a.m. in New York where the airline was headquartered. The phone rang 4 times before a groggy voice answered. "Hello, James? Victor Lin." There was a rustling sound as if James was sitting up in bed. "Victor, what a surprise. Is everything—" Victor cut him off. "My wife is currently sitting in economy class on your flight 372 to New York. She was denied her first-class seat and publicly humiliated by your gate staff, who accused her of ticket fraud." Silence stretched for several seconds. "Victor, I don't understand. There must be a mistake." "The mistake," Victor said, his voice dangerously calm, "was made by your employees who apparently judge passengers by their clothes rather than their tickets." "I'm deeply sorry to hear this," James said, sounding more alert now. "I'll look into it immediately." "No, James, you'll do more than look into it. My wife is sitting in row 27 on your plane right now, while the first-class seat she paid for sits empty. The flight took off 10 minutes ago. I'll call the flight manager right away. We can have her moved." "That's not enough," Victor interrupted. "I want the gate agent and supervisor who did this identified and removed from their positions. Today." "Victor, there are protocols for employee discipline. I can't just— $300 million, James, that's what my firm invested in your airline. That's what kept you from filing Chapter 11. Would you like me to call our board representative and suggest we reconsider our position?" The threat hung in the air between them. "This isn't like you, Victor," James said quietly. It wasn't. Victor was known for being reasonable, measured, even gentle in business dealings. But this was different. This was May. "My wife left the house at 5 a.m. to catch that flight," Victor said. "She dressed comfortably for a 6-hour journey. And your staff decided she wasn't good enough for first class because she wasn't dripping with diamonds or carrying a $5,000 handbag." Another pause. "I understand. I'll handle this personally." "Good. Call me back within the hour." Victor ended the call and stared out the window at the Singapore skyline, his heart still pounding with anger. He almost never pulled rank like this. In fact, he and May had built their relationship on the principle that money shouldn't change how they treated people, or how they expected to be treated. But some injustices couldn't be allowed to stand. Meanwhile, 30,000 feet above Colorado, May was trying to make the best of the situation. The businessman next to her had fallen asleep, his arm taking up the entire shared armrest. On her other side, the teenager had finally turned down his music and was playing a game on his phone. May tried to read her mystery novel, but couldn't concentrate. The humiliation of the boarding experience kept replaying in her mind. The way Patricia and Robert had looked at her. The whispers of the other passengers. The walk of shame past the first-class cabin where she should have been sitting. A flight attendant passed by with the beverage cart. "Something to drink?" "Just water, please," May said. The attendant handed her a small plastic cup filled halfway with water and a napkin. Such a contrast to the crystal glasses and premium beverages she would have enjoyed in first class. May wasn't upset about missing the luxury. She'd flown economy plenty of times before. But the unfairness of it all still stung. She glanced at her watch. Still 5 hours to go. At that moment, the lead flight attendant's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Kevin, your chief purser. We're experiencing some communications from our headquarters. Please remain patient as we sort through some passenger seating arrangements." May didn't think anything of the announcement. Airlines often moved people around to accommodate families or balance the weight on the aircraft. She returned to her book, determined to distract herself from her discomfort. Back in Singapore, Victor had rejoined his meeting, but he was distracted. His phone sat on the table in front of him, screen up, waiting for James Wilson's call. The airline executives continued their presentation about the potential partnership, but Victor's thoughts were with May. He had met his wife during their sophomore year of college. He'd been a scholarship student with big dreams and empty pockets. She'd been an art major with a quiet confidence that had drawn him immediately. Their first date had been a disaster. A cheap restaurant with terrible food, but May had laughed through it all, more interested in their conversation than the setting. When his first company failed spectacularly, leaving him with massive debt at 26, she'd picked him up, dusted him off, and encouraged him to try again. When his second venture showed promise, she'd worked extra jobs to help fund it. And when Global Connect finally took off, making them wealthy beyond imagination, she'd remained unchanged, the same grounded, compassionate woman who valued people over possessions. His phone rang, pulling him from his memories. He excused himself again and stepped out to take the call. "This is completely unacceptable, Victor," James Wilson said without preamble. "I've spoken to our operations team. Your wife's ticket was absolutely legitimate. Our system flagged it because she used a premium credit card that wasn't in her regular spending pattern, but that's no excuse for how she was treated." "What are you doing about it?" Victor asked. "I've already contacted the plane directly. The flight manager is going to move your wife to her rightful seat immediately. The regional director is meeting the flight in New York. And as for the staff involved..." Victor waited. "The gate agent and supervisor have been placed on immediate administrative leave pending termination, and our head of customer experience will be stepping down by the end of the week." The news should have made Victor feel better, but instead he felt a twinge of guilt. He wasn't usually the type to demand people lose their jobs. That was the kind of power move made by the entitled billionaires he'd always despised. "James," he said, his tone softening slightly, "the gate staff need retraining, not just termination. This isn't about punishing individuals. It's about fixing a culture that judges people by their appearance." James sounded surprised. "I thought you wanted them fired. I want accountability, but I also want change. Fire them if you must, but use this as an opportunity to implement better training." There was a pause. "You continue to surprise me, Victor. I'll make sure this becomes a teaching moment for our entire customer service team." After ending the call, Victor texted May, "I love you. Let me know when you land safely." He didn't mention that he'd called the airline. May wouldn't approve of him throwing his weight around, and he respected her too much to undermine her independence. She would find out soon enough when they moved her to first class. They could talk about it later. For now, he had a meeting to finish. But his thoughts remained with his wife, flying somewhere over America, unaware that things were about to change dramatically on that plane. May had just managed to doze off despite the cramped middle seat when a gentle tap on her shoulder startled her awake. She opened her eyes to find Kevin, the lead flight attendant, leaning over her with an expression she couldn't quite read, somewhere between anxious and apologetic. "Ms. Wong," he said softly, conscious of the sleeping passengers nearby. "Could you please come with me?" May blinked, confused. "Is something wrong?" "Not at all," Kevin assured her quickly, too quickly. "We just need to speak with you privately." The businessman next to her stirred, opening one eye with mild interest. The teenager on her other side had fallen asleep, headphones still blaring faintly. "Should I bring my things?" May asked, suddenly worried. Was there a problem with her sister in New York? Had something happened to Victor? Kevin nodded. "Yes, all of your belongings, please." May gathered her handbag and carry-on from under the seat in front. As she awkwardly maneuvered past the businessman who seemed reluctant to fully stand up in the narrow space, she noticed several passengers watching curiously. Kevin led her toward the front of the plane. May assumed they were heading to the galley for some private conversation. But to her surprise, they continued past the economy cabin, through the premium economy section, and into the business class area. A few passengers looked up from their movies or laptops, but most paid no attention. When they reached the curtain separating business class from first class, Kevin paused and turned to her. "Ms. Wong, I want to personally apologize for the misunderstanding during boarding," he said, his voice low and serious. "We've received instructions from our headquarters to rectify the situation immediately." May's eyebrows rose. "Instructions from headquarters? During a flight?" Kevin nodded, his professional smile not quite hiding his discomfort. "It appears there was a serious error made by our ground staff. Your first-class seat, 2A, has been kept available for you." May stood still, processing this information. How had headquarters gotten involved in something like this mid-flight? Then a realization dawned on her. Victor. He must have read her text and done something, but what exactly had he done to cause such a rapid response? "I appreciate the gesture," May said carefully, "but I don't want to cause any trouble." "It's no trouble at all," Kevin insisted, now looking slightly nervous. "In fact, our regional director will be meeting the plane in New York specifically to speak with you." The regional director? For a seating mix-up? This definitely had Victor's fingerprints all over it. "I see," May said, feeling a complex mix of emotions. Relief at being moved from that uncomfortable middle seat, embarrassment at the special attention, and a touch of concern about what exactly her husband had done to cause such a stir. Kevin led her through the curtain into the first-class cabin. The contrast was striking. Spacious pods instead of cramped rows, the hum of conversation replaced by peaceful quiet. Only 4 of the 8 first-class seats were occupied, business travelers working on laptops or enjoying premium meals. "Here we are," Kevin said, gesturing to seat 2A, her original assignment. "Can I get you anything? Perhaps some champagne or a hot towel?" The same flight attendant who had barely acknowledged her in economy now hovered nearby, looking eager to please. The sudden change in treatment was jarring. "Just water for now, thank you," May said, settling into the wide seat. It felt like a throne after the cramped middle seat in row 27. As Kevin arranged her drink on the side table, May noticed him exchange glances with another flight attendant. Something was definitely going on beyond a simple seat change. "Kevin," May said quietly, "what exactly did headquarters tell you about my situation?" The lead flight attendant hesitated, clearly weighing his words carefully. "We were informed that there had been a serious customer service failure that needed immediate correction. And that," he lowered his voice further, "the matter had reached the CEO's attention." May closed her eyes briefly. The CEO? Victor must have really pulled some strings. While part of her appreciated being rescued from economy, another part felt uncomfortable with the special treatment. She had never wanted to be the kind of person who used connections to get ahead. "Thank you for your honesty," she told Kevin. "I'd like to rest now, if that's okay." "Of course, Ms. Wong, just press this button if you need anything at all." As Kevin retreated, Mee reclined her seat and gazed out the window at the clouds below. The first-class pod offered privacy screens that could be raised for solitude, and she gratefully deployed them now, creating a quiet cocoon around herself. She checked her phone, still in airplane mode, and saw Victor's message. "I love you. Let me know when you land safely." No mention of any intervention. That was like him, fixing problems behind the scenes without seeking credit. During their 15 years together, he'd always been her biggest supporter without ever making her feel like she needed rescuing. May typed a reply, though it wouldn't send until they landed, being moved to first class mid-flight. "Did you have something to do with this?" She put her phone away and accepted a hot towel from a passing flight attendant. As she wiped her hands, she noticed Patricia, the gate agent who had questioned her ticket, walking through the first-class cabin. The woman's face was pale, her usual confidence replaced by visible anxiety. She was followed by Robert, the supervisor, who looked equally shaken. They disappeared into the cockpit, presumably to use the phone to communicate with the ground. When they emerged several minutes later, neither looked in May's direction, but their body language told her everything she needed to know. Something significant was happening, and it involved her. For the next hour, May tried to enjoy the first-class experience she'd paid for, but her mind kept returning to the chain of events her simple text message had apparently set in motion. She sampled the gourmet lunch, declined the wine, and watched half of a movie without really paying attention. As they began their descent into New York, Kevin returned to her seat. "Ms. Wong, I wanted to let you know that Mr. Daniel Cho, our regional director for East Coast operations, will be meeting you at the gate. He's asked to speak with you privately if you're willing." May nodded, though she was growing increasingly uncomfortable with the situation. She had never wanted special treatment. She'd simply wanted the seat she'd paid for. The landing was smooth, and as the plane taxied to the gate, May gathered her belongings. Through the window, she spotted something unusual: a man in a suit standing on the tarmac next to the jet bridge, speaking with ground crew. Most passengers wouldn't have noticed anything strange, but May had flown enough to know this was not standard procedure. When the seatbelt sign turned off, Kevin appeared again. "Ms. Wong, if you wouldn't mind remaining seated, Mr. Cho would like to board before the other passengers disembark." Around her, the other first-class passengers were standing, retrieving items from overhead bins. A few glanced curiously in her direction, probably wondering why she was receiving such special attention. The aircraft door opened, and a distinguished-looking man in his 50s entered. He spoke briefly with Kevin before approaching May's seat. "Ms. Wong, I'm Daniel Cho, Regional Director for Transcontinental Airlines. Thank you for your patience today during what must have been a very unpleasant experience." His sincere tone and deep bow, acknowledging her Asian heritage with appropriate respect, caught May off guard. "Thank you for coming," she said, unsure how else to respond. "Would you be willing to speak with me privately once we deplane? I'd like to personally address what happened and ensure it never occurs again." May nodded, her curiosity now matching her discomfort. As the other passengers began to file out, she noticed Patricia and Robert standing near the cockpit door. They looked as if they were waiting for something, or someone. Daniel Cho noticed her gaze and lowered his voice. The staff members involved will face appropriate consequences. I want to assure you that what happened today is not representative of our airline's values. As they walked together off the plane, May couldn't help glancing back at Patricia and Robert, who now looked positively miserable. She felt a strange mix of vindication and pity. Yes, they had humiliated her, but did they deserve to lose their jobs over it? In the jetway, away from other passengers, Daniel Cho spoke again. Ms. Wong, I understand you're traveling under your maiden name, but our CEO has informed me of your connection to Victor Lin. I want to personally apologize for how you were treated. So it was confirmed. Victor had indeed called the CEO directly. Mr. Cho, May said carefully, I appreciate your concern, but I never mentioned my husband to your staff. This isn't about who I'm married to. It's about treating all passengers with respect, regardless of how they dress or who they know. Daniel Cho nodded solemnly. You're absolutely right, and that will be the focus of our response to this incident. As they walked together toward the terminal, May saw her sister Lily waiting at the gate, looking confused. The surprise was ruined now. Someone from the airline must have contacted her. But as May approached and saw her sister's face light up with joy, she decided the ruined surprise didn't matter. What mattered was being here with family, and knowing that sometimes, just sometimes, justice could be swift and decisive, especially when you had a husband with the CEO on speed dial. The morning after May arrived in New York, her phone buzzed with a news alert. She was having breakfast with her sister Lily in a small cafe near the gallery when the notification appeared. May nearly choked on her coffee when she read the headline, Major Shakeup at Transcontinental Airlines following first-class discrimination incident. What's wrong? Lily asked, looking up from her croissant. May handed over her phone wordlessly. Lily's eyes widened as she read the article. Transcontinental Airlines announced today the termination of 2 employees involved in a serious customer service failure that occurred yesterday at San Francisco International Airport. Additionally, the airline's customer experience director, Thomas Reynolds, has resigned effective immediately. Sources close to the airline suggest the incident involved discriminatory treatment of a first-class passenger. Lily looked up from the phone. This is about you, isn't it? May nodded, still processing the news. I had no idea it would go this far. What exactly happened? Lily asked. When that airline representative called me yesterday saying my sister was arriving and needed to be met at the gate, I figured you'd had a medical issue or something. Over the next 20 minutes, May explained everything, the boarding incident, the humiliating walk to economy, the mid-flight transfer back to first class, and the regional director, who had escorted her off the plane. What she couldn't explain was how it had all escalated so quickly. Victor must have called someone pretty high up, Lily concluded, stirring her coffee thoughtfully. That's what I figured too. I texted him about it, but he just said we'd talk when I got home. He's still in Singapore closing that big deal. Lily grinned. My quiet brother-in-law causing a corporate earthquake from across the Pacific. Who would have thought? May sighed. I feel bad about those people losing their jobs. They were rude and judgmental, but unemployment seems harsh. They humiliated you in public, May. Actions have consequences. I know, but May's phone buzzed again. It was an email from Daniel Cho, the regional director. Dear Ms. Wong, following our conversation yesterday, I wanted to update you personally on our response to the unfortunate incident you experienced. In addition to the personnel changes you may have read about in the news, we are implementing a comprehensive training program for all customer-facing staff, focused on eliminating bias in customer service. We would be honored if you would consider providing input on this initiative. Respectfully, Daniel Cho. May read the email aloud to her sister. Well, that's different, Lily remarked. Usually companies just fire people and move on. Sounds like they actually want to fix the problem. May nodded thoughtfully. Maybe something good can come from this after all. As they walked to the gallery to prepare for the upcoming exhibition, May's mind kept returning to the situation. The airline's response seemed disproportionate to the offense. Yes, she'd been humiliated, but people face discrimination every day without corporate executives losing their jobs over it. Something didn't add up. That evening, after a long day of hanging artwork and organizing the gallery space, May finally had time for a video call with Victor. His face appeared on her screen, tired from long meetings but smiling at the sight of her. "How's the surprise visit going?" he asked. "Not much of a surprise anymore," May replied. "The airline called Lily before I landed. But she's thrilled I'm here and the gallery is looking amazing." Victor nodded, but she could tell something was weighing on him. "Victor," May said gently, "what exactly did you do?" "The airline fired those gate agents and their customer service director resigned. It's all over the news." Her husband sighed, running a hand through his hair, a gesture she recognized from whenever he felt conflicted. "I called James Wilson," he admitted. "The CEO?" "Victor, you didn't." "I was angry, May, the thought of you sitting in that cramped seat after being humiliated." "I just saw red." May was silent for a moment, absorbing this. "What exactly did you say to him?" Victor winced slightly. "I might have mentioned our investment in the airline and suggested we'd reconsider our position if they didn't address the situation." "You threatened to pull your funding?" May was shocked. In 15 years of marriage, she'd never known Victor to throw his weight around like that. He'd always been the gentle giant of the business world, powerful but fair. "It wasn't my finest moment," he admitted. "I was in the middle of negotiations here, running on 4 hours of sleep, and then I got your text." I overreacted. May's initial impulse was to be upset with him for interfering, for using his power in a way they'd always agreed they wouldn't. But the regret in his eyes softened her response. "I understand why you did it," she said. "But those people lost their jobs, Victor. I know. And I've been thinking about that all day. I told Wilson they needed retraining, not termination. But by then the wheels were already in motion. They talked for another hour. About the incident, about responsibility, about the power they wielded whether they wanted it or not. By the end of the conversation, they had reached a decision together. The next morning, May wrote back to Daniel Cho, accepting his invitation to provide input on their new training program, but with one condition, that the airline offer the terminated employees a chance at reinstatement if they completed the same training successfully. 3 days later, as May prepared to return to San Francisco, her phone buzzed with a news update. Transcontinental Airlines had announced a new initiative called Respect Every Passenger, a comprehensive training program designed to eliminate bias in customer service. The article mentioned that the program had been developed with input from industry experts and a valued customer who experienced discrimination firsthand. May smiled as she read on. The program would be mandatory for all customer-facing staff and would eventually be offered as a model to other airlines. Most surprisingly, the article noted that the 2 employees who had been terminated were being offered a path to reinstatement if they successfully completed the enhanced training. As May boarded her return flight, first class, of course, she reflected on the unexpected chain of events her simple trip had triggered. What had started as a humiliating experience had somehow transformed into an opportunity for positive change. The flight attendant greeted her by name as she reached her seat, 2A again. "Welcome aboard, Ms. Wong. We're honored to have you with us today." May noticed the woman was wearing a new pin on her uniform, a small globe with the words, "Respect every passenger," around the edge. "Thank you," May replied with a genuine smile. "It's good to be here." 6 months later, May stood nervously at a podium in Transcontinental Airlines headquarters. As the guest of honor at the official launch of the now fully developed Respect Every Passenger program, she was expected to say a few words. Looking out at the audience, airline executives, customer service representatives, flight attendants, and gate agents, she spotted 2 familiar faces. Patricia and Robert had successfully completed the reinstatement program and were back at work, though in different roles focused on training rather than direct customer interaction. "My experience with this airline began with a moment of prejudice," May began, "but it's ending with a commitment to progress. What matters isn't that mistakes were made, but how we respond to them and grow from them." Victor squeezed her hand from his seat in the front row. They had learned their own lessons from the incident, about power, responsibility, and the unexpected ways a single text message could change company policy. As she continued her speech, May reflected that sometimes the most important journeys weren't the ones that took you from one city to another, but from one way of thinking to another, and that was a trip worth making, even if the boarding process was occasionally bumpy.